Hi, welcome to episode 33, Minor Issues. So I've kind of purposely been avoiding talking as much about minor keys because they're a lot more complicated. Major keys are easy, and most of what happens in minor keys is kind of based on what happens in major keys. Minor keys are kind of like, you can almost think of them as like an adjustment to a major key, but it's not like just, when we say a minor key, it's not one thing the same way a major key tends to be. It's kind of complicated. Basically, when we're talking about a minor key, let's like take a major scale. Let's take a C major scale. And we've been over this a bunch of times, but in a C major scale, do, do, you've got your do, you've got your do, you've got your re, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, right? Or if you prefer to give them scale degrees, we know about these little hats we put on them, carrots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? And we know about their names. We got a tonic. We got supertonic, not as cool as it sounds. We got mediant. We got subdominant. We've got a dominant scale degree. We've got a submediant scale degree. Scale degree 7 is our leading tone. And then we're back to tonic. Cool, that's a major scale, right? When you have a minor scale, here's what has to happen. You need to put a flat on that scale degree 3. That's it. That's what makes a minor scale minor, mostly. The next most minor-y thing about a minor scale is this. You got to put a flat on that scale degree 6. And then the thing that sometimes happens in a minor scale but doesn't really have to and often doesn't is this. I'll put this in parentheses. You got to put a flat on that scale degree 7. I'm only putting a flat on them because we're in the key of C. If we were in the key of C sharp, I'd be putting a natural on them. Basically, you got to lower them. In other words, a lowered scale degree 3, a lowered scale degree 6, and a lowered scale degree 7 are the things we think of as minor-ish. Especially this, next most especially this, and just kind of this. See what I mean? Right away, we run into these minor issues. Minor has issues for us as students and teachers and musicians. Even from the get-go, defining what makes something major, what makes something minor instead of major is like, is it this? Yeah, definitely. Is it this? Kind of mostly. Is it this? Not really, kind of, a little bit. A lot of the confusion about minor stems from how we do minor key signatures. And that's kind of dumb because historically, we didn't really do key signatures different for minor. Historically, the thing we call the Dorian mode was the minor mode that people used to make a key signature. So, for instance, historically, D minor was kind of like, you know how like C major is like your go-to key for explaining musical concepts. And it's the key where fixed do and movable do completely overlap. It's kind of the same for D minor. In the olden days, if I was going to write something in D minor, if I was going to write a D minor scale, I would not put any flats or sharps in the key signature. And maybe you remember from a previous episode when we talked about modes, that this would make this into a Dorian mode. We got that raised scale degree 6 that we associate with Dorian mode. And then, in actuality, in most pieces in a minor key, almost any time someone played scale degree 6, in most contexts, they would lower it. And then same with this scale degree 7 can often be raised. When you want it to have that leading tone effect, it is raised. And then eventually people got sick of always writing this flat, so they started just putting it in the key signature. And then someone made the genius observation that, hey, the key signature with one flat is also the key signature we use for the key of F major, right? And here's an F major scale. And if we take the same pitch class collection, but we use a different note as tonic, then we get a D minor scale, right? So I'm still using an F, G, A, B, B flat, C, D, E, F. This flat is in the key signature over here, but I'll put it in parentheses. But instead of starting on F and going to F, if we start on D and go to D, it's the same exact pitch class collection. So that means we can use the same key signature to capture it. When we have two different scales that have the same pitch class collection but a different tonic, we call that relationship relative. So D minor is the relative minor to F major, and F major is the relative major to D minor. And nowadays, that's how we do our key signatures. So let's go back to C major, right? The relative minor to C major is A minor, and the key signature for A minor is just no sharps or flats. Let's write an A minor scale. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. Sounds like this. That's an octave. No, that's the actual octave I wrote it in. So what this has, as opposed to if we wrote a major scale, is the lowered scale degree 3. So it has a C, not a C sharp like an A major scale would have. It has a lowered scale degree 6. That's our F natural. If we were in the key of A major, we'd have an F sharp. And it has our lowered scale degree 7. That's this G natural. It'd be a G sharp if we were in the key of A. This is what people call the natural minor scale. Talk about minor issues. I have issues with this idea that this scale is natural. It's actually kind of the most artificial minor scale, honestly. It is rarely used just in this form. When it is, side note, people call it Aeolian mode. When it is only used like this. In reality, scale degrees 6 and 7 in real life music that is in a minor key are adjustable. Which one you use is always context dependent. And that's another reason there's so many issues when we're talking about minor. There isn't just a minor scale. The minor scale has 2 scale degrees that can vary depending on the context. So, think of what a scale is. It's this abstract representation of all the notes you might use. And it's easy in major because you just use the notes that are the notes. But in minor, you can't really make one abstract minor scale because these two guys won't stay the same. So a lot of times people are taught 3 minor scales. They're taught the natural minor that goes with the key signature. In the natural minor, as opposed to major, you have a lowered scale degree 3, a lowered scale degree 6, and a lowered scale degree 7. Like I said, almost never happens. For one thing, we love this leading tone to tonic sound so much, especially when we're using a 5 chord, a Roman numeral 5 chord. It's not going to sound like it wants to resolve without that leading tone. So we have something that we call a harmonic minor scale. I don't even like teaching this because I disagree with this stuff, but you should probably know it. A harmonic minor scale has the lowered scale degree 3 and the lowered scale degree 6, but it has our old, what some people just call the raised scale degree 7, or the leading tone. P.S. When we lower scale degree 7, it's no longer called the leading tone in its music theory name. It's called the subtonic. So a natural minor has a lowered submediant and a subtonic. A harmonic minor has a lowered submediant and a leading tone. And so anytime you're going to spell a harmonic minor scale, you need an accidental to raise that leading tone. If it was natural, it needs to be sharp. If it was flat, it needs to be natural. If it was sharp, it needs to be double sharp. Okay, this creates a weird problem. See if you can hear it. Did you hear that second to last interval? Kind of pops out, right? This interval. It's because it's an augmented second. Augmented second kind of pops out to our ears. And a lot of people, this is our explanation for why we have this third kind of minor scale. This third kind of minor scale raises scale degree 6 and scale degree 7. So it sounds like this. But that's only on the way up. On the way down, it lowers them back to how they are in the natural minor scale. Because when you're moving down from tonic, you don't need that leading tone. So it sounds like this going up and down. And this is what we call the melodic minor. It has raised 6 and 7 when you are ascending, but it has lowered 6 and lowered scale degree 7 when you are descending. And in fact, we do call this like the ascending form. And we call this the descending form of our melodic minor scale. This is something everybody learns when they're learning their scales at piano or when they're taking a fundamentals or music theory class. But then it's kind of like Santa Claus. You're going to find out eventually it is not as you were taught. I'm so sorry. It's way more complicated than you were taught. There's not a composer who sat down and said, I'm going to write a piece in harmonic minor, or I'm going to use the rules of melodic minor for this minor key composition. No, it's like I was saying before. In minor, scale degrees 6 and 7 are adjustable based on the context. Let's talk about some contexts where you would use each. Say we're in a minor key, and we're on a tonic note, and we want to just go down and back up. We call this a neighbor note, and we put a little N by it. That's a time when you would want to raise that scale degree 7. Like here that is on top of some chords. Right? If we did not raise it, it would sound like this. Which, I don't know, that sounds kind of cool, but it doesn't have that leading tone feeling, right? Here's a time where you definitely wouldn't, if you were going to step down from do to sol. A lot of times then, you would want to keep the unraised ones. Right? It would sound kind of a little weird. Wait, actually, again, that sounded kind of cool. But it sounds weird and cool, right? That's a time when you would want to use a lowered one. If you're in the key of A and you have your dominant scale degree and you wanted to do an upper neighbor, that's a time we would almost always use that lowered submediant. I'm using an F instead of an F natural. Listen. Right? Right? If we did that without lowering it, if we had the raised submediant, sounds kind of weird to me. Although, even to this day, in jazz music, they love that raised submediant. They like the Dorian mode in jazz. But that's one of the contexts, see, where you'd use the lowered submediant. There's other contextual things. There's other reasons. A really common reason we talk about is if you're spelling a Roman numeral 5 chord, or if you're trying to use a Roman numeral 7 chord, or a 5-7, or a 7-7. In either one of those cases, you want that dominant feeling. You want to use your raised version of your leading tone. It gets super complicated. This is going to actually take another episode because we're almost done. So I'm going to change the name of this, Minor Issues Volume 1. Next episode, we'll talk about some more minor issues. Goodbye.